Hello and welcome to the Huddle. Liam Santa Maria back with you, just days away from the final round of the NBL23 regular season, and it's so tight. A whole bunch of teams still playing for their playoff lives, a race for top two, a whole bunch going on. Now, we've also got the awards night just around the corner, the Gazeys, and the finalists, the top three vote getters for each of those awards announced earlier this week. So to break it down, well, there's really only one man that you could talk to. The man for whom the MVP trophy is named after, the greatest to ever do it on Australian shores, the 7-time MVP, the 15-time All-NBL first team selection, Andrew Gazey. So sit back, relax. Up next, Andrew Gazey. Drewy, wow. Good. Thanks for joining me, man. Good to see you again.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Always nice to sit back and hear some of the accolades and not have to go out and step on the floor and justify it. Very nice.
Well, the 7-time MVP gets rolled out on the regular, but 15-time All-NBL first team is just a beautiful reminder of the greatness over such a long period of time.
It was an interesting era. Played through a time when I first came into the league, there were 16 teams, so it was a lot more players than we have these days, and seen a lot of variations throughout, and played with some superstars, which always helps my resume because I played alongside some of the greatest of all time in Mark Bradkey, Leonard Copeland, and many others that really helped my situation. So. A bit of right place at the right time as well for me. So it sounds impressive, but for some reason in my mind it's not as impressive as it sounds because I understand that there was some good fortune along the way.
No, it sounds impressive because it is impressive, but we enjoy your humility. That's part of what we love about you. Hey, I mentioned that it's called the Gazeys. Now, of course, it's you. It's also your dad. The Lindsay Gazey trophy sits on that Coach of the Year award. Is it do you enjoy the fact that it's referred to now as the Gazeys and you know, in honor of what you and your dad brought to the league over such a long time?
Not really. It's a little awkward. I think that certainly from my dad's perspective, absolutely, he deserves every bit of recognition that he gets, and his contribution to the game extends well beyond just the NBL. So when his name's associated with it, I go, yeah, that's justified. Me, not so much. It's whenever I hear it, the Gazeys, I still start to think, hang on, it's not, it's the MVP Gaze Award, but now that they've sort of whacked the whole box and dice into the Gazeys, that's like, hang on a second, I'm not so sure that might be too much of recognition for my contribution. So it's it's nice, and I'm extremely honoured to have the little statue and the trophy named after me, and hopefully this league continues to flourish, and long after I'm dead and buried, people will be looking at that and go, geez, look at this trophy. He's not dunking or anything. It's this sort of big-headed little statue that I've got here, and they'll be going...
a little finger roll sort of operation.
Yeah, what the hell is this all about? So, but it's nice. It is nice, and I am humbled by the honour that's bestowed upon me.
All right, well, that was a little morbid. So let's move on and get stuck in. Hey, there's been a lot of talk over the last few days after the top three vote getters were announced by the league on social media. People with views on who is in, the snubs, and who's out and the like. You, of course, again, a part of the panel of experts, the group of media that were involved in creating the short lists for each of these awards. How did you find this process this time around in terms of, you know, was there any of the particular categories that you found more difficult than another, or what were your thoughts overall on the process there?
Yeah, I think they've done their very best to provide the best process to get outcomes where you feel like that it's very transparent, it's very open, and awards go to those that are most deserving. Now, because of the stature of the competition and the quality of athletes, there are always going to be some that are just as worthy as the winners, but through a process, you eventually got to come up with a winner. So there's always going to be some disappointment, some speculation about certain players, but by and large, they kind of, in my view, they kind of pick themselves. And you and I were I think you were, Liam, were on the nominations committee that sent a list to...
Not this year. I wasn't on this year.
You weren't on this year?
Yes.
Right.
Doing the Next Stars thing, it's a little bit of a conflict of interest there, so it's best that I'm not involved.
Well, but you have a bit of an understanding of how it works. And the nominations committee, it's like when we had to nominate 15 MVP candidates. Now, the difference between your 9th best and your 15th best, I mean, you just throw it out there. It's really it's really difficult. And I think ultimately from all the nominations committee, the players and coaches were sent 13, I believe it was, 13 potential MVPs for the season. Now, to me, that's very broad. Very, very broad. And in that particular category, I think, well, really no point having the nominations committee, because when you're going to throw out 13 players that the coaches and players can select, I mean, anyone could have come up with 13. All the main guys are going to be there. So I think that being so broad, it's understandable, and they've basically got the option to make their own choices. But when it gets down to the Defensive Player of the Year, the Sixth Man Award, the Most Improved, they are categories that, fortunately, I watch a lot of basketball. But even with that, it's still very subjective, particularly something like the defensive category. And I say that because we have the eye test, and we see effort, and we can put some statistical analysis to it. But in an era where there is so much strategy involved in the game, about what teams and certain players, what they are willing to accept, what they're not willing to accept, so much switching that goes on, so much rotations, and so much... It's not really that one-on-one situation as much as what it perhaps might have been in the past on the defensive end. And because of that, I think that perhaps the coaches in particular are going to be better judges, because they understand specifically what's going on. They understand what the rules are that certain players and coaches are implementing, and therefore can make perhaps a little bit more of an accurate assessment based on strategically what the opponent is doing.
All right, so let's then dive straight into the most controversial of the finalists and the group of finalists over the last couple of days. You're referring to it right there, Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah.
So it ends up being Shea Yelly, Derek Pardon, and Antonius Cleveland, the top three vote getters from the coaches and captains. Now, there's been talk, I've been talking about Jarrell Brantley, Jim McCall, Justin Simon, other guys that could or should have been involved in that consideration. I listened to your man Kane Pittman on the ESPN Ball and the Real World podcast earlier this morning. I thought he made a really good point.
Yep.
Because he was saying, well, should Shea Yelly, having only played 14, maybe 13 games over the course of the season, should he have his name even got to the coaches and captains? Should it have gone through that first level and been a part of that small group of nominations? What's your thought on this award and how it's played out?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, and I think that he is an elite defender. There's no doubt about that. I think the criteria should be expanded, that maybe 70% of the games you had to have played in. So I might be sitting on the fence a little bit in the sense that I think that he's an elite defender. You notice the difference when he is playing on the floor with Melbourne United, and he has a very significant impact these days at both ends of the floor. So he absolutely is one of the best defenders in the competition. But if I was the Grand Poobah, which I'm not, I would have put a higher weighting on, and maybe the criteria should have been there need to be a minimum number of games, because we've only seen that eliteness in maybe half the games. So I think that there should be some regulation about how many games you need to play in order to be eligible. But I don't want this to be an insult to Shea Illy because he is.
I mean, that goes without saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolute star. And a guy that impacts, and in those games he played, had a massive impact at that end of the floor in particular. So if you were the Grand Poobah and who you said got it, who would you hand over the Damian Martin Trophy for that award?
Well, I'm going off the top of my head here. I'm happy to tell you, I don't have the information right in front of me, but my top three, I know Justin Simon was in my top three.
Yep.
I know Derek Pardon was in my top three. Mm-hmm. And I believe Antonius Cleveland was in my top three. Mm-hmm. I think I had Xavier Cooks in my top five.
Geez, toss a coin.
I can't remember.
All those guys.
I can't remember who the other one was. It may have been Shea Lilly. It might have been Brantley. All those guys I've got great respect for and are worthy of there. But they were. I know that those top three were my top three. And I don't know how many of I think the coaches and the players might have had. You might know. Was it 5 or 6 to choose from?
Yeah, maybe 6 or 7 is what I'm.
7. Okay, so, again, when you're going 6 or 7 deep, not trying to exonerate myself or the committee's responsibility, but our influence on determining any of the winners is a very minimal, if at all, in some of these categories, particularly the MVP, almost non-existent, because we weren't really narrowing the field all that much.
All right, well, let's pivot now. You're talking about some of these categories kind of pick themselves. I think Coach of the Year is probably one of those this year. Scott Roth, of course, the reigning Coach of the Year, and he has been sensational once again. He's got his team. They're a very strong chance to lock in the top 4 spot over the course of this weekend. But it lands as Chase Buford, Murdy Mayor, and Adam Ford as the top 3 vote getters. One, the defending champion who came into the season with high expectations and has met them in a big way in Chase Buford. And 2 Cinderella stories coming from 9th and 10th last season to a top 3. Man, all very, very worthy. I think I just have Adam Ford probably with just a tiny bit in front. I thought that the way, in particular, his team handled the loss of Keanu Pinder midway through that season, that 6-game winning streak without him to stay up there in that top 2 mix, really, really impressed. And of course, he has a big involvement in that. And it's so hard to judge, of course, when you're not in the locker room.
Yeah.
We know that for a fact. But given the state of play, what's your thought on this award, these finalists, and who should take home your dad's trophy?
You're spot on, and they're all absolutely worthy. If you were asking for you have to make a decision one way or the other, I would lean more towards Chase Buford. I think the challenges of backing up are significant, and the complete transformation in his imports. He had 3 bona fide superstars last year. He's got 3 different looks. Maybe Derek Walton Jr., you can draw some comparisons, I guess, but I still think that he is different to last year's MVP. So I think that with that different look requires different points of emphasis, the ability to make those changes. Yes, he's got a very strong league MVP candidate in Xavier Cooks. He's got a really good depth of talent, no question. But when you are the number 1 team, when you are the barometer for everyone else, and usually you're going to get the best preparation and the best performance in regards to that arousal levels and players getting up for a game, they've had to deal with that night in, night out because they are the defending champs.
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult to defend a title. And to do it with a different group, the adjustments that he's been able to make, I would, like I said, if you had to twist my arm, he would be the one that I would vote for as number 1. But when you look at the Cairns Taipans and what Fordy's been able to do, it's extraordinary. And what Modi's done, and you've got the 2 bottom teams now vying for a top position, it is worthy of recognition. Absolutely. And if it goes to any one of those, I'm not saying they were robbed. I'm saying, yep, well done. They deserve it. The thing about it is, too, I think it actually will go to one of those, because I think whenever the fact that they've taken a team that's been what most of us consider poor to now being legitimate championship contenders, that all bodes well. You know, people realise that that's something they've been able to do something dramatic. So I get that. So that's why I think that one of those will probably win. But from me, as saying how difficult the challenges are, the challenge that Chase Buford and what he's been able to do is worthy of my top goal.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I suspect it probably, if I had to guess, it'll probably go to Mody Mayor, just because like the slipper has really fit that group. If you want to talk about Cinderella stories, like, you know, just the tough years that they've had and the turnaround.
Correct.
How classy he's been over a couple of certain key moments, the way he spoke about what happened with Corey Webster, his social media team. So just some things I think that might have stuck in the mind of voters, clips that they saw on social media and the like. They've all done spectacular jobs.
Yeah.
Let's talk now about the most improved player. So for me, most improved, I ranked them for just on a personal basis. Will McDowell-White, Keanu Pinder, who is an amazing story, could potentially win back-to-back Most Improved Player awards for the first time in history. I don't know. I've never seen it anywhere in the world.
No, me either.
And then I also had Jack McVeigh. Now, that ends up as the top three vote getters not being McVeigh. That's Sean McDonald, who's a really cool story in his own right.
Yep.
How do you see this one playing out with the guys that are in that mix?
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's one of the hardest ones to pick, because sometimes it's just about role and opportunity. How much have you actually improved? Well, my improvement is the coach plays me more, and the coach plays me in a better position. How much have I actually improved?
I'm the same guy.
Yeah, that's it. Now we are making a judgment on how they were previously, where you know, a different set of circumstances, different teams, different personnel around them. So I got more opportunity. So now my ratings and my statistics and how I'm perceived is vastly different because I'm getting more opportunity. So that it can be a factor. I think that when you look at Keanu, it is an extraordinary situation where he legitimately, when you look at the growth he made last year to how he's continued to grow, it is a fantastic story. And there's another example of Adam Ford needs to get a lot of credit for that, for at the very least motivating someone to keep that focus, to keep working. So he's absolutely worthy. He would not be he would not be my number one choice, but he absolutely is in there. And he is, the reason he's not my number one choice is because I probably had him number one last year, and to make such an improvement that you see is better than someone else, it's a little hard. Sean McDonald is right up there in my opinion. Again, that one could be more just to do with opportunity, just getting to play more. But how he's been able to fit in big moments, he has assumed a role that has been very, very important to the Jack Jumpers. The other one, and if you were saying, well, who ultimately would you have as number one? For me, Will McDowell-White, I think, is right up there. His value to his team and the way in which he is contributing individually is extremely important, and I think he has made enormous strides forward. Now, I might be slightly biased because I'm thinking since he first came back into the league, and maybe I haven't looked specifically at what he did last year, maybe. Right. But from the player that he was some time ago to where he is at now, he is the most improved. Now, again, is the criteria most improved from 2 years ago, or is it most improved specifically from last year? They're all valid things, because the New Zealand situation last year was something that is almost an asterisk next to it.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I that's how I would lean if I was casting my votes, which I didn't do. All we do is put up nominations, and all those were in there. So I'm not wrong on any of this.
Yeah, no, I like it. I feel similarly, and I tell you what, I can't wait to watch Will McDowell-White in the playoffs. Like you talk about the importance to that team. He's been playing so well over the past month. He's the engine that makes that team hum. They've got so many great pieces. Barry Brown Jr., third leading scorer off the bench. Derek Pardon, Jarrell Brantley, a bunch of really great pieces. But for me, Will McDowell-White is the guy that makes that team hum. And I can't wait to see how he elevates, because you have to elevate your game in the playoffs, as you know only too well. How he goes when the whips start cracking in a couple of weeks.
Well, you know what? You make and it's another discussion point that you can have in that should these awards include playoff performances? I think you can actually have where you're not going to exclude those incredible performances by individuals that didn't make the playoffs. But if someone does something extraordinary in the playoffs, should they be included? That's another debate, and I can see the pros and cons to both sides. But, I think when you're talking about individual accolades, maybe that has to have some weight as well, perhaps. Now, I understand. You can be, LeBron James misses out on the playoffs this year. He won't win the MVP because we all know how it works. But my goodness, he is absolutely in that top three of candidates, in my view, regardless of whether the team makes the playoffs or not, because of the circumstances of the team that he's playing in. It's very subjective, and everyone will have a different opinion. That's the beauty of it.
I spoke about best six man then in referencing Barry Brown Jr. I mean, he's the out-and-out favourite for this award. Sitting alongside him in the top three vote-getters, Rashad Kelly in Tasmania, Tyler Johnson in Brisbane, three imports that have been coming off the bench for the majority of the season for their squads. Thoughts on this group?
Well, I have some challenges with this category. And based on the criteria, those guys you mentioned, absolutely. But if you take Barry Brown Jr. as an example, he doesn't start, but he'd be close to leading the team in minutes played, I would guess. He plays a lot. So just because you're not on the floor when the ball's tipped, is that what we're calling a sixth man?
Yes.
So it's a
So how else would you do that?
Well, I guess there's an element of subjectivity about it. We're taking a very objective approach to say, hey, you don't start on the first tip, you are a sixth man. Right. Well, technically, yes, but practically, not in some cases, no, because you are playing starter minutes. You are playing, so it's an interesting category, but again, that might be another argument for others. But I think my choice would be Barry Brown. The numbers speak for themselves. If you want to say that he is coming off the bench, which he is, which he is, he for sure to me has had a profound impact. And we saw that when he was injured recently and he's not playing, the impact he has on the team is, well, they lose. They were losing. So they didn't win too many without him, I don't think. Well, not the recent stretch anyway.
For sure.
Yeah, so his value as a so-called sixth man is very significant. So he would have been my choice. The other one is Tyler Johnson. I think that his numbers, again, they speak for himself. Highly efficient, great shooter. Probably fitted in the more stereotypical sixth man because, he played big minutes, but, wasn't quite the same role as compared to Barry Brown. So yeah, those two, I think, are the standouts.
I think it's, like Rashad Kelly has just fit in perfectly there in Tassie. I feel like
For sure.
he epitomizes, everything that Scott Roth has built up a jack jumper to be in terms of how solid he is, how reliable, how tough. It may not be always aesthetically pleasing, but it's effective. And Barry Brown Jr. obviously has been a revelation for New Zealand at both ends of the floor. Tyler Johnson, though, would you like to see? Sorry, let me rephrase that. Do you think the Bullets should re-sign him?
I do. I hope that he stays in the league. I really like him as a player. I think that they went through a period of trying to figure out how to use him and how he fits in. And the Bullets, with the different coaching changes, that made it more difficult. I think that as we saw more of him, you see his efficiency. Like, he shoots the ball at a very, very high clip. And I think that structurally, how you use him is as different to some of the other players. If you're comparing him to, say, Milton Doyle, just to pluck a name out that comes off the top of my head. Milton Doyle can play with an assistant, but can still do his thing and create and get to the rim and do all those types of things. I think that when you're with someone like Tyler, to me, he would flourish more with a little bit more structure, to know when it is his time, to have more designated set plays to get his shot, to be a little bit more structured for him as opposed to someone like Milton Doyle. So I think that Tyler Johnson was really, really good. And I think he's an elite player. And there's always context to someone's contribution. And in a difficult situation, which the Brisbane Bullets went through this year, I thought he performed well.
Yeah. I just wonder whether they might go into they've got Nathan Sobey under contract, whether they might go into this season saying, you know what, this time it's going to be like an import point guard.
No, 100%.
You know, like
no, I'm not talking.
So if not Brisbane, maybe someone else.
Correct. I think, or you're looking at your personnel to see how you can recruit around him to make him more. And they do. You're spot on. The makeup and the mix of the Brisbane Bullets wasn't quite right, and so absolutely. But I still think, even with some of the personnel they've got, you make some other decisions about your other import spots. I still think you can make it work there. But you're right. It needs to be a bigger picture. But I think that he would fit in with a lot of teams.
Hey, just something that just popped up into my head because you mentioned Milton Doyle. All NBL first team. Cooks and Creek as the inside guys. Because
I buy time. I don't.
Let's not get in the rabbit hole about inside and outside. But the fact is, it's 3 outside, 2 inside, and those 2 guys were listed as inside guys. So you imagine they're going to get those votes.
Yeah.
Cooks and Creek over Pinder, I would assume.
But I don't. I know you don't want to go down the rabbit hole. But I'd like to hear a logical explanation of why you can't have Creek as one of your 3 on the outside.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just because...
I'm all ears, but,
Well, just because you talk about, what arrives to the coaches and captains. I think what arrives is the name of the player and where they've been categorised.
Of course. But we're saying that... And whether... Are we picking a team to actually play a game, or are we picking a team to... that we think is the best team, or are we picking a team just to recognise greatness?
Well, I don't. You made 15 of them, so you tell me, big fella.
Well, I think it's more a symbolic selection than you're actually putting your general manager's hat on, saying, "Well, I'm actually going to pick." So I think it's a recognition for elite performance. Yep. And sometimes we would pick 5 that I'd go, oh, well, these are elite performances and they've done that, but this combination here, would I go with this 5?
Oh, no.
Probably not. So
not a thing.
I think if you're going to pick it on recognition, you've got to find a way to get those that deserve the recognition the most, the best chance to be in there.
Ooh. So would you be open to the idea then of the All-NBL first team and the All-NBL second team moving forward being positionless?
Well, not
Just,
well. A lot
just
of
vote,
basketball.
vote for five guys.
Yeah,
Like the WNBA has changed too.
yeah, and a lot of it is positionless basketball. I think what you've got to do is just take a broader view of what a player is, and Mitch Creek is the example. Don't give him the option to put it. If someone thinks that he's worthy of a first team selection, but he's gonna deny someone else that you think absolutely should be there, but because of some positional thing, he's going to miss out. Put him in as one of your perimeter guys. Put him in there and then have that flexibility so you sort of get a bit of both. And that doesn't apply to a whole... But there is some that fit in that band where you could easily see how that'd be. Now, if you had a situation where there were no others, you know, and it was going to deny someone from the perimeter being in there, well, whack Mitch Creek in there as your big guy and get that guy in, because it's trying to recognise those five best performances.
All right, so let's just assume it's going to be two of Cooks, Creek, and Pinder on that as those inside guys, just for the sake of argument moving forward. Bryce Cotton is going to be in there.
Yep.
Who for you would make up those next two spots out of, and I'm going to give you a couple of names here who I presume will be in this mix.
Yep.
Out of Derek Walton Jr.,
Yep.
Barry Brown Jr., DJ Hogue, and maybe you can throw Will McDowell White into that conversation at that point there as well.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, the other one that...
Or Ray John Tucker.
Yep.
Who's been
and the other
great
one
over
that I think is worthy of the conversation. Now, I don't know if he's going to get there. I don't think he's going to. But Derek Pardon and what he's been able to do with the Breakers has been significant. You don't go from last to second, which is where they're likely going to finish, purely because you've got a new coach. You know, you go there because you've got some very significant talent to come in.
Yep.
And I think if you're talking about stereotypically an inside guy, he fits that bill. Now, I'm not going to argue, you know, you've presented the names, but I'm just throwing another one up that comes into that conversation that you're there. I did not when I was ranking them, or it might have been on the show that I do on the radio, or we might have discussed it during one of the games. I can't remember. I know I at that stage, which is 2 or 3 weeks ago, I did not have DJ Hogue in my first team. I did not. So and I did have Derek Walton. So I did have Derek Walton in there purely on the basis that he's leading the team that's got clearly the superior win-loss record, and they're in first place, and the defending champs, and are the absolute unanimous favourites to win it all. So I did have him in there.
And right now, if you had to pick, and man, this is tough, and I'm sorry to do this to you, but if you had to put one of Milton Doyle or DJ Hogue in that team, and the other one makes the second team, who would that be?
Well, if you're just putting it down to those two, which I'm not sure I would, but let's just, for your sake of the argument, that is the case, then I would probably lean more towards Milton Doyle. Now, everyone in Cairns is going to hate me. I love Hogue. I absolutely love him. I think
that's right.
He's in that top. He's in your top All-Star 10.
Elite.
And I'm just trying to, But to me, the versatility of Milton Doyle, he didn't. I was a bit disappointed in his defensive efforts last Friday. I'll give you them up. There was some clips there that I'm sure Scott Roth had cut up and said, "Mate, well, you need to do better than this." Right. So, but there is that versatility, the creativity, his willingness to buy into a system, his willingness then to understand that sometimes I need to call my own number. And he does it without being selfish. He does it within that system. That's an underrated skill. Because clearly he has got talent. You can throw him the ball and let him do his thing. But he's bought into a system when he has to, and has the basketball IQ to know that sometimes this is not an egalitarian thing, and I'm going to have to do my thing. So really respect that. But DJ Hoagie's a star. I love it. You know, the size, the shooting, and him similarly, the way in which he plays with his teammates, all those things. So you're asking me to make a choice. Which one of my kids do I love the most? I love them all. But rather than sit on the fence like I'm accused to a lot of the times, that's the way I would go.
I like it. All right, hey, next gen award, the new one that's come into the mix. Now, I know that you will have some thoughts on the Rookie of the Year being no longer.
Yep.
The next gen award being in its place. It's for players that are under 25 as of April 30 of the year in which the season finishes.
Yep.
Imports, DPs, anyone playing in the league is eligible for this award if they're of this age. Luke Travers, Sam Froling, Sam Wardenberg have been the top 3 vote getters in this category.
Okay. Gee, it's a tough one. It is a real tough one. Wardenberg is a great talent. Really good, and the way in which that he's helped Cairns transform their team, he's a big part of that. And maybe because we're sort of a bit old school, we think of what this award has been. It's hard to change your mindset. Because you know, if it was the old-fashioned Rookie of the Year, then he'd
be the guy.
Not. And there's this very strong argument, Liam, that what really is a rookie? The criteria for being a rookie: someone that's played 4 years at a major school in the ACC playing for Miami. You are very, very experienced, but you're still a rookie, as opposed to a young kid coming in that's never had that college experience, maybe coming out of the AIS Josh Giddey style. That's a different type of rookie. So that again, it's.
So now with this award, that this thought doesn't apply. It
doesn't.
These are the young guys in the league who's been the best.
Yeah. Well, I guess again, it's very, very difficult because all 3 of them are absolutely worthy. I suppose if I had to again pick one, I'd probably say Sam Froling. I think that with the captain of his team, young guy, carrying that burden of captaincy, his form was a bit variable, of course, but across the checks and balances, I think he is a next star, genuine next star, Olympian. He keeps improving. He might even be not in this league. So he has got tremendous upside, and always hard when you're talking about a player that was in a team that only won 3 games. Well, they might win 4, who knows, but only won 3 games. But I think that the competitive nature of that team, given the adversity that they had to go through, there's always context to a player's performance, and his context is very, very difficult. Very difficult set of circumstances, and he had responsibilities beyond just playing the game, and for that, maybe I'd probably lean more towards him.
Yeah, really tough. Sam Wardenberg also, you know, as you say, he's been great. So has Luke Travers. In the end, what I think is quite cool is the opportunity here to celebrate these 3 bright young stars of the league. You know, and one of them is a first-year pro. Sam is not. Luke is not. But they're all still very in that sort of young 22, 23-year-old category, and they've all got really great, bright futures in the game, whether it's here or elsewhere. So, you know, congratulations to them, and onwards and upwards from here.
Here. Well said. They're all equal worthy winners. Unfortunately, someone's got to win, as they say. Or who knows? There might be ties. But the voting works. And
you know, you talk about all worthy winners. We land now at that Andrew Gazey trophy that will be handed to the most valuable player of NBL 23. Now,
oh dear.
I was rapt to see. I wasn't surprised, and I hoped I wouldn't be surprised to see that the three top vote getters were Bryce Cotton, Xavier Cooks, and Mitch Creek. I think in the end, as a result of Keanu Pinder's injuries and his missed games and the like, for me, those, and Barry Brown Jr. similarly, those three for me are the guys in the running, and I think that's pretty well held, widely held view. Man, I said on the NBL Overtime the other day, like, I'm happy to sit here and listen to people make cases for any one of those three to be the MVP of this season. What a cool place to be. You know, there's been years along the journey, and there were numerous where you were the guy where it was really clear who was going to be the MVP of that season. Bryce has been that guy a couple of times along that way. This year, I don't think it is that way. If any one of those guys walked out with the trophy, you would be hard-pressed to say robbed in any way, shape, or form. Man, what a great season each one of those guys has had.
It is, and whoever wins it, like we were talking about with a lot of the other awards, there's no argument from me. Any one of those three wins it, I say, yep. Bad luck to the other two. You were equally as worthy, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles. The voting system worked that way, and you didn't get the nod. But they've all had profound impacts on their teams. I think they've all conducted themselves and represented their teams the way that you'd want them to be represented, and they're all bona fide leaders. You know, they lead their teams in different ways, but they absolutely lead. Some people like to use the argument to decide who it should be by saying, well, if you took one of them out of their team, what would be the impact? I think that that's not unreasonable. And I think that with each and every one of them, it would be profound. It would have a significant impact on each and every one of those teams if any of those were there. I don't, in that particular circumstance, I don't think you can argue that, you know, maybe slightly you could argue that particularly early on in the season, if Bryce wasn't there, what he means to Perth, maybe he'd have the nod in that category. But geez, you take Mitch Creek out of that team, and I have great fears for where that team would be. And despite their horrific run of injuries that the Phoenix have had, Mitch Creek has kept that team together, in my view. He's kept that team highly competitive, been remarkably consistent, and, you know, he would not be out of place as the league MVP. And Xavier Cooks is a bona fide superstar. He's just fun to watch, playing in the best team in the competition, and that will probably, if I was to guess how, when you can't separate them, how people would vote, I think that Xavier Cooks will probably get the nod because of the incredible success the Sydney Kings have and him being the head of the snake. So he's the best player on that team. So he'll get that nod. In my judgment, if I was making who would be my pick, I would probably lean more towards Mitch Creek.
Wow, right. I've been leaning towards Xavier Cooks. Yeah. Just a tiny bit ahead of Mitch Creek, who's just a tiny bit ahead of Bryce Cotton. And then I woke up this morning and didn't feel like I knew what I was talking about. And thinking, hold on, Bryce, my God, like have I got voter fatigue? I'm not even voting, but do I have the proverbial voter fatigue on Bryce Cotton and going back and re-looking at his amazing season? And Mitch Creek, I agree with everything you just said there. So that's why, I mean, speaking about sitting on the fence, like I probably still stay in that same frame of mind. But again, I just reiterate the point, all three of those guys. And it's very unusual, I think, to land in a spot like that where you go, it's really, really, you know, you're saying someone different to who I'm saying, and a bunch of people will be saying Bryce Cotton. So it's a really cool situation to land in where the flagship award for our league could go to any one of those guys and everyone would feel they're worthy.
And I think there are some times in games where Sydney had a margin and people will give credit, as they should, that perhaps Xavier wasn't chasing stats. You know, that's a common thing when I hear people, others, when we talk about making this judgment and just looking at the stats and the numbers. And but to me, Xavier had a few games where he was really good, but not at the same consistent high uber level as someone like Mitch, who had to be, because his team was decimated.
He didn't have those games. No.
If he didn't have some of those games, they're probably not going to sneak into the finals.
Yeah, and
but you're right. I feel bad even saying that, because
I mean, because you got the guy on the team who's locked in a top spot with and he's the franchise guy that built the team around him this season. He's the fulcrum around which it all pivots. Yep. And then you got a team in Southeast Melbourne who knows? Maybe Melbourne absolutely whack Adelaide in unusual circumstances, and Southeast Melbourne don't even make the top 6. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy how close it all is, and who knows? They could even finish 5th and host that first final. So it could go either way, but can't wait to watch it all play out. We're going to see it on Tuesday night. You're going to be up there handing it to one of those guys, which is going to be awesome. And in the meantime, we've got a whole bunch of games to take place over this weekend that are going to be very, very fun to watch.
No, it is. And what an exciting time. And I made this call on one of either the jump, or we might have said it during the broadcast, that through good luck or whatever explanation, thank goodness we do have this top 6 this year, because we have legitimately teams. Even the 7th place team this season would make claims to say over a short 3-week window or 4-week window throughout the playoffs, they get it together, they could conceivably win the whole thing. So I think it's the change has been justified, and it won't always be like that. I'm sure we're going to have some seasons where we go, oh geez, this 5th and 6th playing may not be all that relevant. But this year that's not the case. So this year, well done to those that got out their crystal ball and could see what was unfolding, and it gives chances for teams that may have just had some bad luck throughout the course of the season and fallen off the perch a little bit. They get their players back, and who knows, they might be able to make something special happen.
True. Well, can't wait to watch it. Happy calling on Friday. That Cairns-Perth game is going to be... is that Thursday?
No, Friday.
I don't know what... That's Friday.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. So happy calling then, and then I'll see you on Sunday, the final day of the regular season, as we bring it home with 2 massive games. Great to chat. Great, man. Thanks so much.
Good on you, Liam. I appreciate it.